like the new intervention right now for like the current right money being that of like 306 million like and definitely once that's the voting would be over like the thing that we that the final scenario that I'm looking at is the belief for like Q1 people voting to like continue playing like the CDS and move on to like the Foxwood game while bottom people would be that wanted to like lose the stadium like the scenario that I'm looking. So like once again I'm think that by a single vote like I'm sorry there would be that majority of like the Indian candidates who would want to like continue playing Indians like the in the final result of like the current voting that's like about to take place after like the range like the scenario that I'm looking at and I'm looking at I feel like how it would be any of things that in my personal interesting for like this year of league. I'm also bring like that old man as well as like Thanos and like the people who would be having that intensive that continue playing the Korean games, so they would be succeeding in that convincing like the majority of the Korean people is like that. I mean like at least like more just like one more than like the exact half of like the current total number of like players and as like how they would be doing it there comes definitely that the old man was like they have the him to do like the speech like him will be like shouting out to like everyone and telling everyone that basically even if it's like the 356 million of like the total prize money is like right now shared with equally between them, then like even if they return back to their real life, to like the real world and real life, like then still they will be like they will be still having to like live in like poverty while still struggling. They would only just barely would be able to like survive would be they would still have to like struggle. They might be able to like pay off their debt, but like they would still have to like since they struggle to like still survive like would be along the lines like they won't be able to like they will still be in force even at that point. It would be along the lines of the uh, the old man speaking candidate and with him and Thanos like trying to like convince like the remaining can save like the scenario that I'm playing. And I would be like what like that old man is fixing would be like exactly that like just one more game like if they play like the fourth game as well then like they would be like after like the fourth game through like the majority voting like they would have like at that point like monthly so by the time the fourth game would be over like they would have like the exact amount of money with which like they would not only be able to like pay off like their debt, but like so it's like each of the game candidates will be not only able to like pay off their debt, but also will be able to like have proper start over and would have to like basically fairly survive in for the kind of like a situation without having to like fairly survive in like a poverty kind of like a situation like they would have like at that point enough money to like at least make a decent enough of like a living. It's definitely without much great struggle would be along the lines on the different like that old man as well as like Thanos like totally on the different would be saying the and this would be what they would be pitching and like this would be what through which like I'm giving them with exchanging like the mind of like the giving candidates like the scenario that I'm putting. And that would be how like I'm putting like by the time like the current voting up like the third students right now, but like the current voting about to take this one like the current vote would be like over like I'm putting it would be like 51 and 49. 51 in like the favor of continuing playing like this game with like so 51 thing that like with like just one more like game like they will be able to like finally all be able to like happily return back to that real life with like and we get let's start over. It's like the scenario that I was doing. But like I'm definitely according to my earlier theory and predictions, but like like a predicted like either a transparent as well as or like a non-transparent approach to that changing scenario where like a fundamental kind of different after like this would be like the current voting process that's like about 2 million after like the third game would be their last chance of like each of like the Sugian candidates in like the 2024 Sugian to like escape from like Sugian. It's definitely my prediction because like I'm definitely something like after like the fourth Sugian like the voting process like option like would be like getting revoked. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. Definitely I'm looking like after like the fourth Sugian there won't be like Sugian candidates won't be allowed or given like the option at all of that voting to like basically leave the Sugian like scenario that I'm looking for. So right now, totally it's basically leaning more towards like the bottom of like according to like infos like stealthy and villains, the kind of like plan and all was like I'm looking like it to be in like a non-transparent manner where like just the game of the friend definitely would be like withholding that like decision to that for there to not exist like a voting process to like leave the Squid Game after like support Squid Game will be over. It's like the scenario that I'm so like in non-transfer man I'm president like the Squid Game candidate like after like definitely I'm preferring like the post Squid Game definitely since like the VIPs would have and definitely I'm preferring like definitely after like the current voting process that's like about to take place after like so that again like the result of it would be like definitely would be seen as like extremely important for like info to like basically take the decision to like whether to give like the invitation card for like the community for students for like the VIPs or not. So like whether send it to like the VIPs or not would be all decided through like the current voting process that like about to take place after for the students that members. And it will be potentially because like I'm looking like if like the in like the current voting process that's about to take place after like first in like the voting is in like the favor to like continue playing this game, then only at that point like will be only be when like info like the officers will be able to like send like the invitation card to like the VIP so that like by the time the VIPs would be making it to like just to game buildings to like watch like the as well as to game like by then so that like the VIPs will be able to make it to like the Squid Game building by the time like the fourth Squid Game would be over. There's like the so that like the VIPs would like comfortably settle in within like the Squid Game building and relax and be totally fully ready without any urgency. Like they would be able to like rest up and like will be straight away be able to like and would be able to like be perfectly ready to like basically to watch and prepare to like to watch like the as well as like to game. It's definitely members. So like certainly because of this person, I'm preferring like the voting process that's like about to right now take place after like so the Squid Game will be the last chance for like Squid Game candidates to leave like the Squid Game in like the voting process like definitely like in the scenario that I'm preferring. So definitely precisely because of this program, definitely preferring although like it to be like a huge shock because like I'm definitely preferring because of like the in like the year 2024 question that also number three numbers preferring like the year will be only watching like the as well as like the six good games alone like I'm preferring definitely so because of that like the first full game would be extremely difficult and like extremely dangerous and extremely difficult so extremely superiorly dangerous and like difficult when compared with like the Squid Games from like 1 to 3 in like the Internet of Squid Games that you remember the and it would be to like totally eliminate and weed out all the geek players among like the 100 and especially since like there are like 100 Squid candidates remaining even right now like I'm looking definitely prove like the fourth Squid Game like I'm looking definitely after like the fourth Squid Game would be around delivering like it would be only around like at most like I'm looking it would be like from 20 to like 30 would be around like the total number of Squid candidates that will be remaining after like the fourth game would be over. The fourth game would be like instantly causing that elimination and wipeout of like almost around like 70 or 80 of like the current total number of speaking candidates with like certain in the scenario that I'm looking and that would be also like probably weed out and eliminate out all the weak speaking candidates so that like think of it and give that much of like an entertainment for like the VIP that will be showing up to like witness and watch like the game is definitely my good experience. So definitely I'm looking like after like the first eventually like the scenario that I'm looking is for like after like the first two game would be over, which should be extremely dangerous and scary to game. Like the first game I'm definitely extremely dangerous and scary game that will be wiping out like almost like 70 or 80 of like the 100 current switching candidates like scenario that I'm looking for like the ones that the few ones switching candidates like around like 20 to like 30 switching candidates on a searching for thing would be only surviving it's supposed to game like I'm looking they will be like totally extremely traumatized by that fox game and but so that like at that point like the moment like they will be like completing like the fox game and returning back to like switching candidates room at that point still like they would all be like the majority of this straight away would have probably fixed in their mind to like with their decision to like straight away what to like leave the students like the scenario that I'm looking for. Like I'm looking at that point would be when like I'm looking like the maybe it wouldn't just be like the sibling of the salon that would be showing up. Maybe the officers as well after like the first video maybe like the officers as well that can be you might end up into like the sibling candidate room to like basically to bring that ultimate twist of like a rebate that is there won't be any voting after like the first video. So like that thing given that as was there and I'm shocked to like that remaining 20 or 30 candidates like the scenario that I'm looking at. like I'm looking at that point, like those remaining 20 or 30 sitting candidates will be losing all hope and will be extremely scared and like and frustrated. And I'm looking that to be that sport situation is what I'm looking like Sanjon will be totally I'm looking at that point will be totally eventually using to like get those remaining the majority among like, those remaining sitting candidates who badly would be wanting to like use this again, but won't be able to like to get them to like totally revolt against and rebel against that the Squid Games to like totally bring down like the Squid Games and for them to like hopefully take away and leave with that great huge quantity of black money within that club to do that. So like I'm looking Sanjo attempting that after like what Squid Games would be over, it's like preventive scenario that I'm looking for the time of the game. Definitely one of the three person for like while Sanjon would be attempting this with that after self like Sanjon I'm looking like calling out like the switching candidates and then totally secretly having this like group discussion to like and brainstorming on like how to like rebel against and to vote against like students and fight and bring down like the student workers and put an end to like students and all that. So like while this discussion would be going on the preparing info and well skills would be quite precise on your manipulation. Definitely that way like info would be like leaking that to the player was one while info would be like using the from that info would be like leaking that critical information to like the Squid workers and robot Squid workers like that information reaching like the officers and everything. Like this scenario that I'm so like by the time Sanjon and this like and a majority of like the team of like Squid candidates would be like launching the reward attack against like the Squid workers against like the Squid like at that point like I'm by then like to like info passing on that information to like the studio workers and like officers and all of them will be like totally and well and fully prepared for like the counter attack against like Sangyona is like army switching candidate. It's like the scenario that I'm so like I'm looking like as like that the revolt of like Sangyona and his team would be like starting to like fail. I'm looking it will be at that point that I'm looking like exactly I'm just going to be at that point that like Sangyona will be getting that like massive help through like the backup of like Junho and like Junho's team with like Junho's like and team of those like trained forces. Like all of them like at that very moment itself like storming and infiltrating into like the studio building and that provided that like massive help for like Sanjon and just like army that calculate them at fighting against like the studio workers and like that way like that whole fight resulting in like the studio workers getting like overpowered by like the team of like Sanjon and like studio candidates and as well as like jump and just like forces and I'm bring like that eventually resulting in like basically the VIPs for the escaping and recuperating succeeding in like escaping and recuperating from like the game building. It's like the scenario that I'm preparing and I'm preparing like maybe info as well by then like succeeding in like escaping. It's like the more likely scenario that I'm preparing right now in the thing. Like but new preparation right now for like the voting calls. I'm preparing like in like Sanjam's team that I'm preparing everyone in like Sanjam's team preparing will be voting to like leave and the CGMs like the scenario that I'm building, and that's for like in children's team, like bring this kind for certainly for like up like a young me after like witnessing like a young like elimination fight before children I like children will be had topic definitely would be like from by that like children like the only thing in children's mind right now will be to like not see any more of the like such situations so like children right now would have that mind fixed to like basically to leave the stadium. So like the name of children right now voting to like leave the stadium. Like the some as well as like some game candidate will be definitely having that regret of like basically like the previous voting to like continue playing the stadium. So like this time I'm definitely putting like some game candidate voting to like leave along with like the most game candidate as well that voting to like leave and I'm voting definitely as for like the as for like the father of like the father swinging candidate of like that little girl who's like unwell, like that father swinging candidate as well. But like even though he is in such a difficult kind of like and the urgent situation, like I'm looking like even like that father swinging candidate right now would be definitely and would be voting to like leave like swinging certainly one of the impression and definitely from his point of view, I'm definitely he would be right now thinking that basically that leaves with like the current even if like the current 356 million that would be getting set up like I'm thinking uh I'm thinking like either thing to that way even when get it split up like either he would be having like enough money to like totally contact like the surgery of like this dot or like if even if like the other possibilities like even if like that money might not be sufficient enough like I'm looking that father Indian candidate would be like okay done with like Indian and he will get only confident, feeling after like going through like experience like so far, like I'm looking like at this point actually will be like with it totally fed up and would have totally reached the limit and basically in the right now of thinking of like the mindset with the mindset that basically it's like what are money out of 10 to 356 million that will be getting split up and he would be getting that it's that he would be needing more money to that for the rest of the day of the thought he will somehow that go somehow manage to like make that money somehow would be like he will be feeling that confident like far better to like really step outside into like the real world and like to like put in all that hard work and somehow make that money to like have that purpose for just that long that possible. To be along the lines of like a confident feeling that like even like that father figure candidate will be feeling right now, especially when with so like the flavor for even like that father figure candidate have been voting to like leave the Squid Games like the scenario that I'm doing. And I'm definitely putting like the shaman woman like I'm putting her I'm definitely putting what time will be voting to like starting playing like the Squid Games like the scenario that I'm doing. Even after like the her extreme care of like the going through like the second skill game like in like the skill game like like the shaman woman who might have definitely had like that added boost of confidence on top of like her survival like especially since like right now like the person like the shaman woman has gotten like a few 2 or 3 followers as well. So 2 or 3 people who think like one of her followers like in like definitely this would all be collectively making her feel powerful right now. Definitely maybe like shaman woman her right now only totally feeling overconfident as if like she could like play one more game. That's like my good impression. So definitely I'm preferring which right now in like the current voting the shaman movement I'm definitely preferring to that what to like continue playing with experience, especially when presentation. And as for like the Jamhi as well as like the NG guy, I'm definitely preferring both of them voting to like these like the games is like the scenario that I'm doing. And that's for like the NG guy like I'm thinking like even though Jamhi even told like the NG guy about like him only wanting like Janji's money. Even though Janji talked to like the NG guy along those lines, like I'm thinking still like the NG guy would be totally feeling hopeful that basically Jan of like Janji eventually agreeing and that way like him being able to like start our and I'm thinking like even though money would be like most likely like then he going like highest priority like I'm going definitely that then he as well I'm like it would be like I'm in the case of as for like the mindset of like then he going like for him like I'm doing like both John he as well as like his like desire like start over to be most likely of like equal priorities to like then the guy definitely I'm doing so like definitely because of that like I'm doing like the Bitcoin guy would be like probably feeling hopeful that like of like basically mindset would be to like totally leave right now and basically he would be totally feeling hopeful that like outside in like the real world he will definitely be able to like eventually convince like Jamhi to like totally to give up her a good share of like her money so that like he could like totally all of her money so that like he could totally start over and he will be feeling hopeful that like once he start over like at least that time like he will be definitely be able to like be successful will be along the lines of like a confident feeling that the independent guy would be having. And at that point, definitely, I'm looking like he would be definitely having that genuine Indian as well to like probably to perfect like Janti as well and to like live with less Janti and like to have a child with Janti and all that like I'm community having that genuine desire as well towards like living such a life as well. It's definitely my and protecting Janti as well. That when the guy would be genuine about that as well. It's definitely my very and person to like especially because of all the written up, definitely putting like it will just be Janti, but like I'm doing like the Bitcoin guy as well. I'm definitely putting would be like working to leave like this game. It's definitely number 300. So my Dr. Emerson right now as for like the girl member in like the Thanos team, like I'm putting that he her definitely I'm looking this time would be voting to like lead like the games and I'm looking like this time I'm looking bring like that innocent guy in like Thanos team to whom like that girl member in like Thanos team have like kind of like a liking towards like I'm looking like him totally right now would be totally feeling like feeling guilty and would be feeling that absolute regret of like totally in a way kind of um like doing kind of like a betrayal to like that girl female girl student candidate in like Thanos group during like the industry game. So like I'm doing like due to that like I'm doing like that innocent guy member would be feeling without a bit of guilt and regret. So like I'm doing this time like I'm doing like him totally listening to like that girls Squid Game candidate. I think like she had told him to like leave like the game. That is what I think. So like I was going definitely this time I was thinking like that innocent guy Squid Game candidate spent a bit totally disobeying would be building up that courage and disobeying both Thanos as well as like Thanos' friend. And basically to spend that the innocent guy and was friend definitely voting to like leave the game. And I'm wondering that girls member in like Thanos' team as well totally voting to like leave the games. Just like in the scenario that I'm looking for, but I can't remember him. Definitely at that point, self putting like also like scenario to be like Thanos as well as like his friend like straight away bullying that innocent guy member in his like game. At that point, this was voting to like the game like scenario that I'm doing. And at that point, for example, during that girl member thinking candidate trying to like protect that innocent guy. But like I'm doing like Thanos and his like friend bullying him as well at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point, the player was playing like the in between guy, so they stepping in to like as like a protector for like the innocent guy. And that like at that point, it's like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point, I'm doing Thanos and like his friend like probably trying to bully like the innocent guy as well. Like the scenario that I'm doing. And at that point, I was like most likely info once again, like info along with like Sanjay once again, like stepping up there, or like info by himself, like working towards the like the scenario that I'm doing. So, like I'm doing like seeing info walking towards the number between like actually like Thanos as well as like his friends from their experience like with like fighting info definitely they will definitely they don't having that fear towards like info. So like I'm between like Thanos and like his like friend at that point stepping back and then it was like that way like I'm between like that collectively reflecting in like I'm between like that innocent guy as well as like that girl member in like Thanos saying leaving Thanos team at that point and most likely joining like the team of like the Indian guy is like the scenario that I'm looking in one friend. So like the name of friends right now is for like to definitely be in like support to win that and to bring that mother student candidate as well as like that mother student candidate who's like sort of is like unwell as well as like definitely junkie as well as like that ex-girl member in that kind of thing as well. Like these uh student candidate from definitely would be getting eliminated in like the force to get like put into scenario that I'm definitely predict and that yeah we bring definitely even with like right now even though definitely extremely reluctantly will be that near listening to like the orders of like near like superiors and just really not interfering like I'm still definitely near if we once again breaking like the rule and basically but definitely I'm preferring near definitely in like the courts to gain up definitely the golden members I'm definitely preferring like that compulsory candidate like the unwell like I'm preferring that part to gain candidate since I'm definitely will be getting eliminated in like the courts to gain at that point I'm definitely preferring that would be kept alive. So like I'm looking like even after getting eliminated, definitely being kept alive. And right at that point, so definitely in your it will be like another Indian doctor that would be like probably using like the weapon at like the at like that part of against candidate and he will be kept alive. So like at that point, since I'm definitely putting like New York or pretending making up next rebellion by like straight away quickly walking towards where that purpose candidate will be and like using our weapon and like thoroughly eliminating like that purpose candidate and like dying on the spot. It's like given the scenario that I'm looking straight away I'm killing him I would join him straight away at that point. It's like New York at that point once again pretending against like the officers out of like at that point the family going like shows exact to game of those who had like earlier that Neo like then straight away like uh taking Neo into like the civilian building at that point so from like the civilian playground area like under the like close to game of straight away like that was taken away Neo into like the civilian building and at that point like everything Neo is already prepared what such a scenario. So like I'm putting Neo totally straight away attacking both of them and like Neo totally that eliminating the those two game methods and Neo straight away would have totally figured like prepared and they might have been totally prepared for such a situation. So like Neo might have totally figured and found out like that escape route which would still be present through that like ceiling area about like the restroom of the decision candidate. So into like say a ventilation network. So like I'm looking through there, like I'm turning me out straight away after like taking out those exact two Squid Game of letting me out straight away running through that civilian candidate and so and from there like I'm me out straight away getting into like the air vent to like the ceiling area of like the air ventilation network and that way through there, like, probably keeping and hiding between the game building with that. And at that point, we all will be totally fed up and we all will be totally deciding to like basically and to maybe like go out by taking out like all like the as many student workers as like anyone can like and because maybe like thinking of like basically so like in your right now would be that think at that point would be totally thinking of like they're taking out like the officers and then to like take out as many student workers before either you already getting eliminated by like the entirety of like the or greater number of like student workers or like me also be feeling confident to the point of like basically putting an end to like the students herself by using her skills all of her skills like as like so the right thing like I think we always let about it. So like I'm just to use all that skill and to use like the air ventilation net use complex air ventilation network area to that basically launch that attack against like against and by to near that we are attempting to like take out like each and every single one of like the game of us by herself is also like an individual conflict scenario that I will be the and the same. I'm still getting to my other impressions as for like that shift which I'm also thinking will be happening eventually in like new like mindset to like take out like game of the benefit and to like create that eventually ending up becoming totally helpful for like Sanjon as like Sanjon would be planning and plotting his like as a billion to put an end to like this game by like who like the choose army of like the majority of the Squid Game candidates that like Sanjon will be getting to his side once like according to my preparation after like the first game like the unexpected twist of like a revelation happening that like there won't be no more voting to like leave the studios after like the first game like and it was a scenario that I'm sitting on the frame. Certainly I'm sitting to my preparation for like the innocent guys to be a candidate of like Thanos in that kind of group like I'm definitely him definitely surviving like the box to game as well. Like the individual scenario that I'm preparing and that will be solely I'm still implementing the preparation that like him solely being able to like survive like the box to game solely due to like the sacrifice of like that it your to be candidate member of that plan of like I'm definitely I'm like him would be totally reminding her of like her in the younger product that we with them. So he this will be the solution for like showing that like special treatment towards like that innocent guys in the candidates like even the brain that it's over. Definitely like I'm going to different like totally like sacrificing herself in like support again to like save like the innocent guys to gain the candidate in like support again like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm most likely in like support again candidate what's the game like regardless of like the nature of like what like the possible game will be like I'm doing the play totally exactly that ex-girls would be candidate in like Thanos with like totally giving up her spot that you know regardless of what or way that the spot game would do that she would be getting that spot and like she would be like having the chance to like basically prioritize herself and like survive like the first game but like I'm looking like only seeing that at that point seeing that innocent guys would be candidate like really about to get eliminated so like I'm looking at that point giving up her spot to like save him that way solely due to that act of that kindness by herself. Herself like I'm looking that in like that innocent guy who gain candidate that survive exactly for game. Just like things just why like that girl who gain candidate will be getting eliminated in like the first game is like in this scenario that I'm looking for. So like the name of the way I'm looking right now is that basically definitely since like this time like the voting is like from that descending order from like the last like I'm looking since like so since like once again like it will be into that will be like the last person to like vote like definitely I'm looking like at that point like the point table of like the voting scoreboard will be definitely putting with the like uh 49 and 50 is like the scenario that I'm looking so like 50 in like the favor of like basically continue playing like the Squid Game while like Waterman will be in like the favor of like leading the game of like the scenario that is available. So like I'm on like the current 100 total Squid Game candidates I'm definitely putting that info. It should be like definitely like info is like number one. Once again, like it, and the last person to like vote the like info. So like at that point, I'm definitely putting like scenario to be like Sanjon and just like entire team probably celebrating straight away, like saying that basically they have won like the voting that like they are like the voting is totally going to be in their favor and definitely think like and hosting their team and the close to them like basically definitely involves like only voting going to like vote to like leave like against we like with that absolute more confidence like I'm putting Frank on and all and would be celebrating. But like I'm putting at that point this time like I'm putting like it will be like that. It's like last time it was like in like Sanjon thing it was like that Janbe that ignoring guy Janbe Sanjon's friend that had made like the betrayal and voted to like continue playing the game from the this time it will definitely be like info that will be making the betrayal and definitely will be voting to that final vote of the vote. Will be totally making the betrayal and voting to like continue playing this game. It's like the scenario that I'm preparing. And definitely I'm preparing like info totally making up some sort of like an excuse of like a reason as for like why like he in like the very end like why he had that absolute chance to like basically like to have the to save the all like basically the fact that like info betrayed all of them and basically voted to like continue playing those games like and in that way like the voting ending up becoming a tie with like 50-50 with like the scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point I'm looking like I think I'm definitely predicting like the ending of like the current voting for like I'm definitely ending up with like in hope like final voting like the point table the scoreboard being that of like 50-50 with like among like the total 100 remaining civilian candidates like 50 voting to like continue playing the game like 50 voting to like lose games is like the scenario that I'm looking and at that point I'm looking like definitely like the Squid Game workers like totally like saying the decision that basically like them totally deciding to uh like bring a lot of like them totally deciding like randomly pick one among like the 100 candidates to like to re-voting as for like that final vote which will be deciding whether they should like stay or leave next the game. Like the scenario that I'm considering. So like at that point I'm considering definitely for like it will be totally like according to so definitely I'm looking like those two game workers I'm definitely think would be most likely well fully aware that like info is like the man is also like about that I'm looking. So that's definitely I'm looking like them especially choosing specifically info to do that final extra voting. That single final extra voting that would be deciding like the fate of like the student candidates whether they would be that staying and continuing to let the fourth study or let leaving like the stadium like the scenario that I was describing. So definitely I was working like that way in hope with trying Sangyon and his team twice and basically like the second time as well I was working like in hope totally voting to like continue playing these games like the scenario that I was doing. So like this will be like the point where like I'm showing that extreme frustration between like Sangyon connecting to like info be figuring like along the lines of like info is not that innocent as like or like a kind-hearted as like in those scenes on like the outside. Like that things of vision number of things arising with like kind of at from that point on the scenario that is going. Because like I'm then after like the scenario to be like for like the voting process to like end up being the space through that the final vote being info and where like info initially would be making like the first trial of like dungeon thing by like after like discussing just now as like the voting about was about to begin that with like info having discussed with like Sangam how that they have to like please leave like Sangam how that basically they have to like they have to like somehow uh will be like hoping for the best and like hoping that they will be able to like leave games and everything to like go well and that very same info like at that point I'm looking like so like the final voting being that of number one like info making it like first betrayal and that way like the scoreboard of like the voting ending up being 50-50 and at that point I want to impose the returning back and I'm looking at that point of the like info voting info returning back towards where Sanjon and everything and everybody else that will be like every other members of like Sanjon team will be like standing and they are like I'm looking like info showing up with like his like head bowed down and basically info making some sort of like an excuse for like his betrayal of that Sanjon and saying that thing. So like I'm looking at that point would be when according to my definition the keepering like the game workers would be falling out in random like one of like the game workers who want to gain both. So like at that point that was really becoming info. It's like the scenario that I'm sitting on to. So like at that point definitely everything like Sanjon and all of them like totally like holding info and like seriously looking info in the face and telling info and telling info that like it's okay that like info got it wrong once, but like this is like their ultimate chance to like save like the entire cases you can get it and like I'm doing something and all of them that have to see the space like they're looking for to like not mess up this time and to definitely vote to like leave the school game this time. If that second chance that like they have to like basically for info got to like do things right maybe along the line Sanjon and all of them to be that selling info. So like and that way like them sending off info to like for info to do like the second voting. It's like the point table being 50-50 like info in his like consecutive like second voting itself like I will win like at that point info once again voting to like continue playing this Williams is like the scenario that I'm moving. And definitely that is like giving the scenario that I'm doing and that like hugely creating that extreme suspicion of like Sangyong connecting like info. From that point on like the scenario said and the range. Like the temperatures were like even though in like the previous voting that while Jungbae had betrayed like Sangyong and his like team like basically by voting like continue playing this game that even then like I'm something like Jungbae like regret Sangyeon might have definitely been hobbies for like Sangyeon and his like entire thing. So like I'm definitely putting like but like Sangyeon being totally comparing that regret of like Jambe and this time Jambe with that regret like totally voting keeping his word and voting to like leave Fushigi this time like by doing that like Jambe would have definitely earned like the trust of like Sangyeon and his like team and those like the scenario that I'm looking. But in the case of Info definitely I'm looking like it would be like more like extreme suspicion kind of like a feeling within something that will be arising, especially because of like if the scenario for new memory preemption would be like two consecutive votings of like info, two consecutive betrayal of like info, like the first betrayal, Sanjon and his entire thing like doing that after just like convince info and then totally like would be also pretending to like totally agree with like Sangyo and Barbara and like then once again like info would be like consecutively making that betrayal and that would be creating a series of people within not only Sangyo but like entirely like Sangyo connecting to that info. That's and it would be after that like I'm supposed to like that very night while Sangyo would be sleeping about like Jambe about something would be it would be at that point that about something Jambe would be like revealing to like Sangyo quickly would be like showing up next to where Sanjon would be sleeping and like would be Janbe would be like softly telling Sanjon about like how Janbe as for like Janbe finding like info strange due to like info on one side being extremely kind and nice and for bright while this very same info basically as to like how info had basically even though it through that action like info had saved Jambe in like towards like end of like the mingle again still like the fact that like Jambe had so only witnessed like info like eliminating in that whole manner like eliminating that student candidate who was already in that room where like Jambe and info had entered like the fact that like Jambe had like shockingly seen like info like in an extremely cold manner, like eliminate that student candidate, that student candidate, like basically that being so extremely that caring like Jungbae and like that Jungbae like probably will be revealing that to like Sanjeon in like the middle of the night in a soft manner. It's like the scenario that I'm referring. So like while Jungbae will be revealing that like Sanjeon like I'm revealing even more Sanjeon is starting to like seriously think and analyze like the character of like this could be the candidate of info stuff you know the version. So definitely I'm definitely putting in like right now I'm definitely putting that way in like the store to get and definitely while Kanbe will be revealing this to like softly to like Sangyeon after to print definitely info still would be like totally or hearing that while pretending to be asleep like I'm looking info to be totally listening to that interaction between like Janbe and Sangyeon well at that point is like even at that point as well that in portfolio hearing that one breaking between like Janbe and Sangyeon like the scenario that I'm looking that way like I'm looking from that point of view totally think Janbe as like a threat that like Info would have to like get rid of as soon as possible for like Info's goal, ultimate goal, which would be to like give like the VIP that ultimate entertainment by like ensuring that like Sanjon makes it towards like the finals of like the Squid Game, makes it to like the Squid Game and for at that point for like Info to be like Info and Sanjon to be like the last two remaining candidates and basically then for like Info to like face off against like Sanjon and right before in like the sixth game and this would be in-house plan and right before like the sixth game begins like for Info to like make that absolute shocking reveal to like Sanjon that like Info like the person running like experience and Info to like do for to like maybe while in like the while like the VFCs will be watching it and to have like that reaction, shocking reaction of like Sanjay probably the witness and the witness and to give that as like an absolute entertainment for like the VIPs would be or in who's like billions of plans also definitely so like I'm just like info maybe might be even confident that basically even if like the VIPs see info like space like still for like info would be like totally confident that basically unlike in like info might not be as scared as I'm also like about this that and maybe because of this reason like I'm doing like quite impose like the scared that like a Squid Game candidate. Definitely I'm doing like since like Squid Game workers are like monitoring like the Squid Game candidates and everything. So definitely I'm doing like the Squid Game workers might have totally changed how like in like the very first Squid Game of like red light, green light implementation before. There definitely might have been like the Squid Game candidate definitely since like during that time like info was like basically watching like the red light, green light Squid Game candidates like performance in like the first Squid Game in like the red box Squid Game while info as like the front man was like watching it from like the room of like the front man definitely. So like definitely I'm looking in like the very first Squid Game 2024 of like the red light in that game there definitely might have seen like another Squid Game candidate as like the number one with like the just number of like number one is definitely going to so definitely like game workers might have totally even noticed that definitely not different. So like I'm looking for right now that actually in host like infiltration as like the disguise of like a Squid Game candidate after like the very first Squid Game in 2024 definitely would be like something that the Squid workers might be well fully aware of. So like the fact that info is like the front man and is like the person running the game will be one thing that I'm also saying like the game workers will be well fully aware of the new so like I'm going to info will be totally a fearless person who will even care unlike Vietnam like info will be far too fearless uh, to the point of like they will even with like the Squid Game workers like finding out about like info uh, seeing like the content, maybe like that might not definitely happen, and maybe even with that, like in Hobbit only okay with that as well as stepping on the race because like in Hobbit only feeling would be someone who only feels powerful with like all like in assist and everything that basically even if like the game workers were to like any prince game work what even try to like betray or like impose things that the structure world like even then like I'm the info will be like totally more confident and will be totally feeling someone who will be totally feeling powerful that like info will be that like info will be feeling that still info will be easily able to like silence them without info getting to like any trouble at all. Especially also in the game so definitely I'm looking like especially because of all the reasons and especially bring like the game because even to the person will be like well and fully aware that like info is like the front man and info is like the person running like this game and that very same info is like the number one skill game candidate in disguise as like the number one skill game candidate. Definitely I'm trained so definitely because of this reason as well, I'm definitely something that in like the voting, that in the current voting definitely towards like the end of like the current voting, like I'm doing like the voting being tied with like 50-50 and like then like this game work up like giving that extra chance and pretending to be like as if like that game work up going like a random thing one of the existing candidates to like vote again to decide like the fate of like the entire like, speaking candidate and like definitely it wouldn't be in random but like it would be like the game of like consciously giving that extra chance to like specifically info while them knowing that info is like the frontman and the person on like against the Michael Jury and so definitely I would say much for like precisely because of all this reason I'm definitely putting like invo's like plan would be for like to have like the 6 games 2024 games like Sanjo and basically in that for info to like make the reveal not only in front of like Sanjun that in-house like the frontman and the person running the game, not only in front of Sanjun but also in front of like the entire VIPs watching that final six to give them as well that ultimate entertainment as well. And in-house still would be like totally feeling fearless as for like even if like the VIPs found out like the identity of info. It's also like be my dream. So that according to my understanding, that liberating that according to info about today having this like ultimate plan for like the 20 for like the finals of fifth game of like the 2024 game of the liberating since according to my understanding, the liberating like info there being that conversation between like Jambe and Sanjon in like the middle of night where like Jambe would accept his like position over like info to like Sanjon like Janbe won't be knowing what is up with like info, but like Janbe would be totally telling Sanjay that something that's like strange and off, seriously off with like info would be along the lines like Janbe in the middle of the night will be softly telling the strange to like Sanjay and info totally or hearing that while pretending to like sleep to be asleep and definitely like info at that point will be seeing Janbe as that as the obstacle in like in house like path to like earn the trust more and more like Sanjon until like and that way to like get ensure to like get Sanjon to always be part of like Info's team, and that way for like Info to like ensure that Sanjon makes it along with like Info to like the final of like the Squid game in like 2024. So like in this plan of like Info would be at that point would be seeing like Janbe as with like absolute obstruction or like obstacle that like Info would have to like get rid of as soon as possible. So like I'm considering right now as for like I'm definitely talking eventually in like the fourth to game like I'm definitely putting like it will be according to like Info's like stealthy betrayal that I'm definitely Janbe I'm definitely putting won't be surviving like the fourth to game like the scenario that I'm doing. Janho definitely I'm looking Janbe I'm definitely putting would be getting eliminated in the fourth to game and definitely it would be like the stealthy villainistic kind of like betrayal or like a stealthy kind of like uh, an attack by like Info while Janbe would be playing just like to game maybe as like maybe like the first game as well would be like a team based game also like about that maybe while Janbe will be that playing that first game after like Info that only close by and Info just stealthily like attacking up or doing something like Janbe that will be threatening like Janbe messing up just like game and basically that way like Janbe getting eliminated or like some other manner, like in a stealthy and villainous manner, like I'm putting like info early, making that absolute betrayal of like Jumbe, and that way, because of info, like this how I'm putting like Jumbe, like the fox to be able to get eliminated, just like simple scenario that I'm putting, and other thing, and even after like Jumbe's like elimination, I'm putting like even though I'm putting someone won't be like saying that betrayal or stealthy betrayal of like info presenting in like Jungles, but like even though Sangyeon would at that point I'm definitely trying would be only seeing that Jungles like elimination alone like but the next still after like the first game I'm super like Sangyeon like suspicion connecting to like info increasing more and more and eventually actually Sangyeon getting slowly getting like the feeling of like the possibility of like everything Jungbe might have told about like info to like of like the feeling of about like import to like Sanjon like this because that Jumbe possibly by then would have said that before then waste of like uh before then waste elimination them they like having told us to like Sanjon like the scenario that everything that way like after like the first game while Info would be like once again trying to like get close up to like Sanjon and acting putting on the fake accent talking in an extremely empathetic and polite manner and like talking about like how like he must have like info and the info on a fake accent talking about how he from his teammates must have like generation learning at that whenever it slowly that was speaking with like Sanjon who connecting to like info totally increasing and like Sanjon totally thinking of that maybe that feeling as if like maybe of like worthy of like info possibly being like the person behind that jumps into elimination that basically like Sandra maybe essentially sticking to that extreme extent. It's like also like the result of purpose and arc and everything. And that way like from that point on and like John totally using this like friendship with like info what appears to be this like friendship with like info totally Sandra totally that's practical manner using that against like info to like totally trick info. So like Apple connect Sandra while protecting to be like still close to like info like Sangyeon maybe like realistically he thinks info out of like Sangyeon like actual code strategy to like put an end to like this game and Sangyeon is still like totally putting on a fake act and basically pretending to be pretending and saying all sorts of lies to like Sangyeon saying all sorts of lies to like info in a genuine seeming manner and that you put Sangyeon putting on a fake act in front of like info and like that way Sangyeon eventually tricking info. It's also like an individual office and art that about the brain and sitting on the bench. Like new trends right now and exploring like the island that like Children's team are right now exploring. Definitely I'm the one won't be like the actual Squid Game island, but like I'm the one who will definitely attract that for like Jumbo and his team to wipe them out. It's definitely my observation in which like this in this strat definitely that boatman front of like Jumbo definitely will be connected to. Definitely my observation because of like my preemption that I'm simply going to that is me that back in like 2020 while John Hope had fallen off like basically the black that boat went on up to like save and rescue like John Hope. Back then might have been told me that boatman might be like even back then might have been like secretly allied to like the to info as well as the experience. Definitely my memory. So like I'm might have been told according to that info order that basically that boatman back then might have saved John Hope. Definitely my memory. So like definitely was different like before. And so like I was telling my information that like this captain for this captain of like the team B of like John Ho's team that like first importance to game and then that captain role as well might have been totally according to like the recommendation of like this captain might have been captain co might have been also according to like the recommendation of like the sportman. So like this captain co as well is fully totally allied to like the this good games as well as the minimum brand. So definitely but like this will be totally according to like the secret plan of like the boatman as well as like the captain boat like they might have only plan like everything like even before setting off to like find it Swedian island in like the person like everything like even before that like uh the boatman might have only formed and might have been able to like might have phoned and he might have maybe communicated with like the officers within like the Swedian building is like one possible scenario that I'm looking at. I'm considering two possible sides. The officers probably having communicated that the fact that basically like Jan Ho basically is like Jan Ho and having like two teams like team and TV searching for like currently searching for like this game island right now. Like I'm considering like that information might have either been even before setting up either might have been passed on by like the government to like the officers and present to possibilities either the officers having passed on such social information to like info or like I'm saying like the officers themselves taking the decision without like revealing that say like info like the authorities and like if that info has learned of it, then I was wondering it might be through like the whole communication between like info and like the officers might be most likely happening while info the using the response. So like I'm just like while info the using the response. And personally info definitely in his like pocket would be having some sort of like a communication device, like a mic would be having like some sort of a tiny communication device with which like info would be giving his orders to like the officers and officers would be updating info as what like happening games and everything. Like this communication would be most likely happening within like the civilian candidate while info would be using the from Mr. Clinical membership. So definitely maybe I'm looking like one possibility is like during one of those communications like the officers having told info about like the search by like the team A as well as like the team B of like Janko and like the boatman like they to find like the game island. So like I'm looking maybe if that has happened and if info knows of it, then I'm looking like info might have given the orders to like the officers to like tell like the boatman to like basically as for like the boatman to like totally to take like the to uh in the to totally ask for like the boatman to like find the like captain to get captain so to be like the captain of like the team G and basically for them both like should totally should not take a credit like they are specified something for like game and that eventually for them to like take like John Pope and all of them the team and the of like the boat to like eventually to like these two specific islands where like impose like men would be like game workers would be like totally hiding and waiting in that island to like basically by the and like they might have even decided on like the exact date and time when like both Captain Co and as well as like the boatman front of like that was like supposed to like take them both of the team and the team B to like these two specific islands where like I'm looking like that two specific islands would be the prospect for them to like eliminate them. So like I'm looking like if info knows of the when I'm looking like according to like info orders like info might have who like the officers like the boatman might have been given orders even back then to like basically to like totally keep to that to, from like the officers not to like the boardman but from like the officers to like the civilian workers who would be like would be showing up to that island that would those two islands that would be the trap like and in one of those islands in which like Janko would be like entering and exploring like for there to like basically for like Christian workers to like keep Janko alone alive while eliminating like all the remaining while eliminating all the remaining team of like Janko's like forces. It that might be like the order that info might have given to like Christian workers like one possible scenario that I'm doing and if that information has not reached that info if that information has only reached like the officers and basically if that at that point like the officers might have decided to like take the decision on their own then I'm bringing the or given by the officer to the civilian workers and like the boardman will be to like get them get like Janko as well as both teams to like these two specific islands for like the order for like Captain Co as well as like the boardman's front of like Janko and at that point like definitely like the game workers would be like steadily and waiting in those islands to like eliminate both the entirety of like the both the teams of like Team A and Team B. But importance in game islands, including Jungle as well. Just like that. It could be one of these two possibilities in film and definitely I'm still thinking about the film like that both men front of Jungle who would be totally most likely putting on a fake actor with like he would definitely secretly allied to like in hope and like Squid and he would be totally putting on a fake actor with this like such a he cares about Jungle and he's like an absolute friend of Jungle because like that's something like the first reason for like Jungle not something frantically like and desperately like so something for like the Squid Game Island on a consistent basis for like the entirety of like 2 whole years and still Jumbo not being able to like, find that game and which is solely due to like this sport and entirety of like the 2 years like being the person like taking Jumbo for like that's of like game island like especially because of like this sportman would be particularly allied to like shooting to use the professor reason for like this sportman like taking Jumbo for like the entirety of like the 2 years into all sorts of islands like but this by basically ensuring to like avoid like this game and might have been what might have happened. This also definitely my opinion that I'm shooting on to another thing. Definitely my opinion is not right now but I'm running the scenario to be like after like Janko and his team have like they entered that island to explore that island like and like simultaneously Captain Poe and the TV of the Captain Poe might have also like right now simultaneously in that person without would be exploring another island. So like I'm doing straight away as like the focus would be like exploring that island. These two islands like I'm looking like both like the boatman as well as like Captain Go. Captain Go would be like simply by themselves would be like taking away like riding away their boat and like would be leaving that island and that way trapping like team A and team B in those islands would be what will be about to happen right now. It's definitely in this game, right? So like that way it would be like clear trap set to like eliminate both the team A and team B of like Junko. New redemption right now as for like the explosion in which like Junko's team was caught in like this really shocking like joy as well as like the person operating his own but not nowhere near as much as for like the boatman. Like I'm feeling it would be definitely the fact that like the boatman was like nowhere near as shocked at all when compared to like the shock of on hearing the sound of the explosion by joy as well as like, the person operating the drone would be definitely would be like the boatman totally faking the boatman front of like Janho would only be pretending to be like the front of like Janho while like the boatman would be actually steadily allied to like the info like students and like, so right now like the person while hearing like the sound of like explosion like it would be something that boatman might have probably been expecting to like happen like so like it might be or like boatman might have been definitely consciously taken like gunpoint team to like this island to definitely to have them get caught in that explosion. It's definitely what might have happened right now. It's definitely one of the so like that boatman might have definitely been expecting like the sound of like the explosion. Right now is definitely my reason would be like the precise reason for like the boatman alone nowhere near being as shocked uh as like how much shock like and joy as well as like the person operating Chevron was on hearing like sound of like the explosion from like the island. It's definitely my preemption right now. It's definitely my preemption right now. Like got like the voting right now being tied at like 49 and 49 and like with like just a random player six and who alone remaining towards like I'm definitely right now but I think definitely for like player six right now I'm definitely will be voting to like lead the game so the next person after that and that way like I'm looking like the score for ending up becoming 50 and 49 that's a state wanting to like leave the game, like the scenario that I'm going to put and definitely at that point I'm also being like definitely I'm still in the preparation that like the Sanjon and just like end up being with you like totally celebrating that is there is that but definitely mid person that is definitely info you like wanting to like leave the game. But like I'm going like while info would be like and info would be like totally straight away would be like definitely won't be like showing any sort of like uh, uh, won't be like putting any sort of like a facial expression of like having like a confusion thing with like his to like uh which option to like vote or anything while in hold is standing right there as like the final person to like vote while in front of like Sangyeon and all those. So like I'm doing like Sangyeon and all of them like totally patting on Info's back and like basically give that gentle push to like Info to like for Info's turn to like vote by they will be all executing Info as well to like vote to like leave and that way like the voting being in like the favor of leaving as like 51 to like voting, and I'm also like, at that point that scenario to be like info straight away voting. Info like standing there and like not straight away, but like I'm doing info standing there and like totally info putting on a fake that absolute fake acting up. Like he's like totally having this like confusion. And then like I'm doing info totally voting to like continue playing these games and that way like the voting ending up with like 50-50. Like the scenario that I'm doing. And splitting the Bible frames and that like then just like Sugima was giving that whole second chance for like a random speaking, pretending to be we were just totally put on a fake account, pretending to give like a second chance to like a random person on speaking candidate, and while consciously they would be giving that second chance to like info while being well and fully aware that it was like a broken community game and info once again betraying Sanjon and this team and like once again voting to like continue playing those games, but minimum friends and that are sitting on the friends. So like the minimum friends right now that is at least simple like number six that are right now voted to like continue playing these games and like it's like for like 50 and 49 and like I'm definitely right now the friend that info would be like totally deciding to like totally put on a fake ad. And like I'm talking like in right now would be totally like innocently would be like going up to like the voting place and I'm waiting for voting to like leave the games is like the scenario that I'm like. So like I'm doing even though Janbe like expressed this like suspicion towards like connecting to like info to like Sandro and like still like totally in straight away at that point this is like would be voting to like leave the game which like the scenario that I was like so like at that point I was like Jangbe totally and I don't have to like basically along the lines of like what was he even thinking that basically it was like totally wrong to like totally even suspect info would be along the lines like I'm just Janko Jangbe at that point would be telling Sangyon and all that and Sangyon would be like all them will be totally cheering so like at that point definitely so we went like to bring that into the game after so we telling the speaking candidates that like it's like it's to just like the 50-50 tie like then giving like a random speaking candidate one option. And at that point then give the chance to like invoke. And at that point definitely I'm able to bring like even more than ever like I'm doing like junk even junk bay as well as Ranjon and everyone from the Xandon thing with only expecting that it was like once again was to like leave the games but it would be at that point that like in would be like betraying all of them and basically would be like totally like voting to like continue playing the games and I'm putting like that way like the team continuing to like the first game and definitely at that point like info would be totally putting on like absolute fake acting and like telling and in front of like Sangion and brothers like info totally telling them that would like finally like I like info totally got he totally got confused basically when it came to like that final moment, like basically he totally got confused and like he totally messed up and like basically for telling Sanjon and others, while putting on the fake act, like I'm really telling Sanjon and others, like sorry and everything. So that's the scenario that I'm preparing right now. So right now, it's that basically since like the rewarding due to like the prize will only take place in like the next day, like I'm different that's definitely I'm definitely like the rewarding will be taking place like right before like the first game. Like I'm doing like right after like the rewarding will be happening like the next day. Like I'm doing it. And the game is like definitely I'm doing like the result would be like to continue playing this game. So like right after the rewarding will be over, like I'm doing like straight away like this again, but it's straight away taken to like play like the first game the scenario that I'm doing and definitely my prevention for like the revoting like I'm definitely putting like I'm definitely putting like the scenario to be like on the very night after like the voting has ended right now in like tie like I'm doing this very night I'm definitely putting like a special good game to already happen like the scenario that I'm so like won't be like I'm considering but like it won't be like game versus like giving any sort of special good game or anything like but like I'm doing uh, on this like very night of like the voting ending up being a tie like Hamilton is wants to like continue playing next games like Hamilton then totally getting frustrated and then totally starting to like hear the possibility of like basically the since like in like the current person voting like basically a lot since like a lot of like speaking candidates who had decided to like continue playing next game after like the second game has changed like their decision to like leave like the game after like the voting in like the after like the third game like I'm going to bring like the fleet especially because of this reason I'm going to bring like ones who have right now in like the in like the type of like the voting that have chosen the votes to like continue playing the games like I'm doing them uh, would be like totally frustrated and fearing like the bottom thing that basically of that basically on the next day of like the revoting basically like their chances of being able to continue playing this game like totally like then losing that chance and basically like the voting to like leave like the games increasing like on the revoting would be like a serious possibility that like I'm putting like that will be totally frustrating like the Korean candidates who have right now like represented like the right had voted to like continue playing with Korean, especially when like I'm doing because of the reason I'm putting like they are totally unlimited to be like an attack by the Squid Game candidates who had voted to like continue playing with Squid Game. Them totally like attacking in the middle of the night, like on that very night, like I'm doing like they're totally attacking like the Squid Game with the intent to like eliminate like great number of like Squid Game candidates who had voted to like leave the game. It's like the scenario kind of in that way that we are doing like a Squid Game kind of like a scenario happening in like just very nice like scenario that I'm doing where like I'm doing like the Indian candidates who have continued to play in the game like would be totally realistically planning on like eliminating the great number of Indian candidates to target and eliminating attacking and eliminating like on that way very nice like attacking and eliminating like great number of Indian candidates who have voted to leave the games and basically that way to like shorten their numbers and then for them to like threaten like the remaining Squid Game candidates who would be like surviving the night the remaining Squid Game candidates who have voted to like leave the game, like who would have still survived even that night, like on the very like through that attack for them to like only that way instill that fear onto them and they basically by controlling them through that fear to like forcefully control them to like that way to forcefully make them through that fear tactics to like instill that way to like forcefully make them vote to like continue playing like the Squid Games in like the next day like revoting, which is like the plans that I'm putting like Thanos like Williams like that old man would be like Williams secretly planning and will be like executing in like the middle of that very night like scenario that so like I'm specifically I'm putting things of there being like a special game kind of like a scenario happening on very night. That means the scenario that I was like and I was bring like that totally that yeah tactic of like Thanos as well as like the old man like ending up eventually working out like the scenario that I was doing and like I'm looking like them all would be like the three candidates who had wanted to like with the remaining three candidates that would be surviving the night and who would have wanted to like leave the game like who would have survived that night would be totally extremely feeling fearful uh, by the time it will be in that time of like the revoting like then say that like I'm putting this that we are like I'm doing like the voting results ending up with like the next day and I'm looking like even after that attack like even after like what is my favorite like after like suspicious with game kind of like a scenario which I'm looking to take place and it's very nice like I'm looking like after that like I'm looking like the number of civilian candidates in total that will be like remaining that would have survived that night would be like I'm looking like kind of like a number of like along the lines of like 70 or like 80 until like I'm looking like maybe 20 civilian getting eliminated or like 30 civilian getting eliminated straight away due to that whole due to that whole which could game kind of like an attack scenario which I'm looking right. So like after that I'm looking like in the revoting like I'm looking like whether it's like regardless of whether it's like 70 speaking candidates that will be voting in that revoting in total or like whether it's 80 like I'm looking definitely eventually I'm looking still that voting will even then I'm looking still the voting totally ending up in like kind of like a tie like kind of like almost a tie like kind of like situation where like I'm doing once again and even that revoting I'm flipping it will be like the final voting it would even that revoting I'm flipping that revoting as well would be taking place in like the descending order. So like I'm doing the revoting as well will be once again taking place starting off with like Sangyon's towards like scenario direction. And this would also be according to like in-house like stealthy order, which like info will be given to like the officers while info will be like that will be like using the restroom like info will stealthily giving that order to like the officers to like once again in like that rewarding to like start off with like Sandron's word like scenario that I've written. So like I'm doing that way in that rewarding I'm preparing like finally like the voting almost becoming a tie and then like it will be once again like all up to like impose vote to like to decide it all. So like I'm looking like in that code like I'm like through like and I'm like included then that I'm looking like info will be making that absolute trial and like will be voting to like continue playing the game and that way like through that single vote of like info I'm will be conducting the game continuing on to like support the game it's like the scenario that I'm also like I'm so like I'm looking it will be after that that I'm looking like jump it would be like maybe so to bring like a sort of it would be after that betrayal of like I couldn't know that I'm like Jambe at that point would be like once again remembering what he had like what he had earlier like tried to like help like Sanjong and they and have stopped himself from that basically that way like I'm going Jambe before like they would be like entering to that play like the first game like I'm going before that like Jambe stealthily without having info nearby, like another like Sunday stealthily taking Sanjon away and like stealthily telling Sanjon about like basically that info how financially Lindsay and Coleman are like had eliminated like that game candidate who was already in that room during like the middle school game and even though that had saved like Jangbe like how much it scared Jangbe and how off like how much info felt something extreme off about like info to like Jangbe. Like I'm Jangbe revealing this before to like Sanjon before like Jangbe would be along with like Sanjon and others will be entering into like the boxing game without like info or hearing this like the scenario that I'm so and I'm looking definitely still remember the room to that like in the fourth skill game like I'm like literally like Jangbe ending up getting eliminated and definitely info will only playing a role in that as well. Definitely remember it because like I'm looking definitely info at that point would be like feeling as if to like make to like step up this like game when it comes to like increasing its like bond of friendship with like uh, putting on with like fake act of like getting even closer to like Sanjon and that way and all that like I'm doing and that was it all according to like in his strategy. So like I'm doing like when it comes to that like I'm doing in whole with only feeling that as so like basically stepping up the game and getting even more closer to like Sanjon and basically getting even more information and details out of like Sanjon as to like and to be able to like properly understand uh to get out like everything out of like Sanjon's mind of like why Sanjon so badly wants to like put an end to like games and all that. It's definitely very and also, since like the games after like the fourth Squid Game would be getting seriously hard like the Squid Game would be like extremely exactly like how it was in like the religion Squid Game with like the glass rich like and like the Squid Game would be on an extremely different level of like difficulty and danger when it comes to like the fourth Squid Game. It's definitely my dream. We should do like definitely improve it only seeing like the first game as like the time for like Invo to like step up his game and basically eliminate like the obstacles that might prevent him from like ensuring that like Sanjon like basically win like the first Squid Game and make the two like the Squid Game along with like would be along the lines in all the things. So like I'm precisely in at that point we'll be seeing that since like Sanjon spent a lot of time with like interacting and hanging out with like Chandra like I'm looking definitely info at that point would be as like info is stepping to like the in like info the only thing done by as this obstacle that like info has to like get rid of as soon as possible. So like I'm looking like uh at that point I was looking like definitely like the first good game I'm delivering Janbe ending up getting eliminated due to like stealthy betrayal or like stealthy attack by info just like the scenario that I'm supposed to so like after like Janbe will be getting eliminated like I'm looking like so those on you won't be like finding out about like info like the road in like Janbe's like elimination and different like till after that is that definitely after like the fourth skill game would be over like Abdulson would be when like Sanjon would be like starting to like form like would be remembering like the words about like info that Janbe by then would have told to like Sanjon before Janbe's elimination at basically Sanjon at that point would be like seriously feeling that suspicion connecting to like info and would be like seriously properly observing and like seriously trying properly observing info with that absolute suspicion and everything from that point on is like into scenario that I'm looking for the premium agreement. But minimum agreements are right now has for like the boatman front of like jump for right now so badly wanting to like return to land to like pick like jump off like thing up like definitely putting it to be definitely due to like the boatman especially allied to like the info and like the studios. So definitely one of the mentions so like definitely like the boatman might have definitely expected like through that this like when the even like the host team ending up on this island might have especially I'm thinking the friends might have been falling to like the trap set by like the boatman and like the boatman might have been totally expecting for like Janho and like the entirety of like Janho's team getting eliminated through that explosion Stephanie member premiership. So like I'm looking like the boatman's plan might have been that might have been what went down. Boatman might have been only seriously expecting to like happen like for example and then they're getting instantly wiped out through that explosion and then for like the boatman might definitely be hiding weapons this like pocket. So like at that point, definitely for like as like Mr. Choi as well as like the since like at that point it will be only Mr. Choi as well as like the person operating the drone alone that will be like remaining. Like at that point for like the boatman to like stealthily use his weapon and eliminate Mr. Choi as well as that person who operates like the drone might have been like the actual plan of like the boatman. So that means right now like I'm referring that need like the boatman's like plan might have seriously backfired because like the boatman might have certainly not expected like basically uh, might have definitely not expected for like only a single person in like John House seems to like get eliminated through that explosion. Definitely not very much. So like this might be the reason for like the boatman right now being so desperate to like head back to land and that way to like buy time for like info and like the civilians to get completed. Definitely my famous. So like number one, like still number the thing is definitely my famous right now is for like the boatman before like setting up this like trap to definitely take like those teams to like this exact island. Like during this trap might have been given according to like the orders of most likely according to like the order of the scrap might have set up and might have even been told to like as like an order to like the boatman according to like the orders of not info but like according to like the orders of like the officers alone. Especially when preemption right now involved with only unaware of Janko and Janko's like team A and team B right now totally like it is something frantically to like find like stadium island the new anything like before bit only unaware of it, like it's a bit only between like the office of civilian officer and just like the boatman alone that like this plan might be going on the new anything might be the potential reason for like definitely the boatman according to my preparation might have definitely expected like along with like Jumpo's team like Jumpo as well to like probably get wiped out in that and eliminated in that explosion. Might be like the case in the situation, which would be something that Info might definitely not give as like an order to like the boatman so to like eliminate just like in the like of them. It's definitely not the same. So like this would be like this trap might have been set by like the boatman and like the office of like the studio like with them both alone like knowing about the that situations definitely could like info only being unaware of this definitely might have been right. And I'm still in the might of that like simultaneously right now still like the Captain Co who will be like definitely also secretly allied to like the boardman and the studios as well might have simultaneously set that during set that time might have like bottom like the team B to like another island and might have like another explosion might have gotten set up and then like in that attempt of like the and in that explosion like I'm looking that definitely will like will win in team B as well like I'm looking like it might be definitely only one of two of them that might have gotten eliminated definitely but again might have survived and I'm looking like the team B might have by now maybe even figured out as for like Captain Pro being like a traitor it's definitely not a brain business. So like I'm definitely by now like the team B might have maybe eliminated Captain Joe and might be on the way to like basically to support to different like the team B might be like right now in the might be like really trying to like report to like Janko about like the boatman being like traitors the minimum train but like I'm the situation with like team B will be most likely that like while team B might have as part of the trap like without realizing as like the same team might have been right now like the person might have been like exploring another trap island like I'm putting like at that point that boatman like Captain Go might have totally been for conflict expecting like explosion to like wipe out McLean that if the team B so like I'm putting Captain Go might have totally team B might have entered and might have been exploring that island without taking their whole radar phone supplemental premise so like a radio phone or like a radar phone supplemental premise. So like another what Captain Co might have done back then might have been that Captain Co might have destroyed like the radio phones especially all the radio phones supplemental premise. So like another that way uh, uh might have been so like another after like the team the like forces might have survived like that explosion and might have run back to like the post Captain Co and might have ask Captain Go where their radio phones were like and with like them being the bridge to that so where their radio phones were like with them that firstly at that point like might have wanted to like get that information about like the even there being craft set for them in like the islands as well due to the explosion like they might have been afraid to like get that information to like Jan Ho but like I'm doing then they might have straight away showed up the two legs the Captain Go and might have asked Captain Go where wrapped up and radio phones were. So like at that point, like they might have like at that point they might have figured that this big Captain Go like a traitor and they might have eliminated Captain Go at that point. Might have been what might have happened. Like they might have maybe interrogated Captain Go and maybe might have kept him alive in like a tied up situation for like they might have after interrogation they might have eliminated Captain Go and might be like separately like the sea by themselves would be like totally like desperately trying to like find like the team of like Jambo to like only inform them about like the government being like that has been trapped and everything. It's definitely my history of this. So like I'm looking definitely eventually I'm looking like still I'm looking like it would be like Jambo's team that I'm looking at would be like the first to like basically find like eventually find like this game and definitely them created. So like I'm looking like in this scenario for my like the scenario to be like Sanjon forming his like Korean candidate army of like and laughing a rebellion of like West Korean uh, building and like while like according to like info like leaking that information maybe to like the Syrian workers and the Syrian workers will be like thoroughly like retaliating against like that reward by the Syrian candidate and as like Sanjon and his team would be like losing hope like I'm looking like it at that point that like Jumbo and his like team of course like will be making their finally making their infiltrate into like the game island. So like I'm thinking that being a huge help for like Sanjon. Yet like I was like the number of game workers in like they will they will be fast greater like I'm looking still even like with like Jumbo and his like also showing up like still like Sanjon and all of them like still being in like starting to like lose that fight against like the Subians and like the Subian workers. So like I'm thinking maybe it will be at that point that I'm looking like while they will be like okay will be feeling that basically like as if like all focus lost and basically that they might get eliminated from the like the Squid Game building by the great army of like Squid Game. Or maybe at that point into when like the team B would be like totally making their whole extremely unexpected kind of like storming into like Squid Game building and basically that way once like the team B will be arriving like I would think that totally mostly boosting up the morale but like giving like enough like strength for like the entire case like Sanjon and Jampo and like them collectively will be ending up being like strong enough to like probably or and bring down like the game workers and basically Neol as well will be at that point will be fighting alongside Sanjon and all of them against like the Squid Game workers and basically collectively they have spent like finally probably or scoring and basically like taking out a bunch of civilian workers and like a bunch of civilian workers getting tired of as well fit into like a tired of state and like I'm during this time like I'm doing that it will be like stealthily managing to like escape and like to VIPs as well and pretty much like they managing to like escape like the scenario that I'm just on of prayer. Like the minimum preemption right now has for like the speaking candidates right now each given like enough portions to like bring out the definitely according to like the safety realistic plan of like info definitely meant to play for like the eventual questions with games which I'm not preparing would be likely taking place in that very night. So like I'm checking at that point to that for like the speaking candidate would want to like continue playing games to like totally use like the glass bottles as like a weapon to like eliminate like the speaking candidates who want who voted to like leave the game would be like this is like villains kind of like an in-depth like I'm looking at constantly according to like info like stealth informed of by this is info might have given by using the might have been the sole reason for like right now like the Suzuki candidate being given right now drinks out of that glass bottle definitely might be a question. Like you know the reason right now is that like regardless of that junk and also dealing what you said of about like info to like Sanjon right now but definitely I would like Jan Day eventually will be revealing that to like Sanjon before like Jan Day's elimination. That's the top game definitely right. So like I'm even like when exactly that will be happening I'm looking first of all I'm looking definitely on that very night itself. It's very night itself I'm definitely prepping that with the spring game happening. So like the spring game candidates attacking each other on the middle of the night like nothing scenario that I'm doing and that's why I'm looking definitely like info totally once again like Young Bear totally shocked me witnessing that info totally acting in an extremely scary and cold manner while during that specific game I'm just playing like info will be like totally ensuring to like attack like the game candidates who had like this meal water to like leave the games like the scenario that I'm doing and info totally doing that while like trying to make it seem as if like info was like only doing that out of like self-defense, and since it was like dark and I'm wondering like the thought attack taking place by like there won't be any light, there won't be much light, or like I'm wondering once again like the light blinking is like another that I'm like it would be only pretending that basically he will be that he had basically attacked the other Squid candidate as like in a manner of like self-defense saying that basically those Squid candidates were like Squid candidates who had voted to like continue playing the Squid games, like who were trying to like take in his life, like basically that way involved in that Squid game. I'm looking like scenario to be like involved only put it on a fake act and then only using all of it like fighting skills to like basically like that coupled with like the uh, using like the glass bottle from that's like a right now offered to everyone else, like I'm doing like that input only using as like a weapon and basically eliminating a bunch of like civilian candidates that had voted to like leave the game, like the scenario that I'm doing right. So like I'm doing after that, and I believe like Jambe would be totally noticing this like basically involves like uh theory ways of like attacking and everything. So like I'm building definitely like Janbe I'm building like definitely after that like the game would be over and I'm looking like as like I'm building two possibilities like it will be either after like the game would be over and like Janbe and Sanjon would be like finally trying to fall asleep like I'm looking like while staying watch like maybe it would be while like would be like while like Sandron would be staying what like until morning like I'm like info would be like after like the person would give info it only lying there like pretending to be asleep while Junpei and preparing like movies won't be able to like sleep at all after like seeing like infos in like theory ways of like behavior and other things definitely everything that which became like the scenario that I'm saying. So that's like scenario that I'm doing. Like I'm doing that middle of the night, like I'm doing it like I'm going to be like keeping watch, like I'm thinking at that point will be when like I'm doing like something probably telling Sanjo about like something seriously off with like info and like basically like revealing like Sanjo about like info like behavior in like the middle speaking and like attack and everything, proving like the main speaking as well as like attack during like the attack during like the Christian as well about peaceful like about maybe like Jambi at that point like the middle of the night like softly whispering and telling to Sanjon's like one possible scenario that happened in this like info while pretending to be fast asleep will be totally over hearing. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. Either that or like the something that I'm doing for like maybe that it thing during like the reporting that will be taking place on the next day. That I'm definitely putting like that like info will be totally betrayed. Like Champions team and info definitely once again like typical decision for like the voting being down to that final last vote to like decide whether like they would be getting to like leave the games or like would have like still continue playing the games, and that final voting like info that totally betraying Sanjon and all of them and basically voting to like continue playing in Sujin's like scenario that I'm playing. And at that point, I was like it would be like Janbe who would have until that point would be only feeling as if like Janbe was like would be like only overthinking about like info. And that Janbe who would be like until that point would be trying to like make himself believe that basically it's all like Janbe for thinking that like uh info is like a genuine person and all that. But like when it will be at that during that revoting at that moment of like info like betrayal that the different like at least like Janbe would be like gently like pulling Sanjon away and like revealing to like Sanjon about like everything it felt he had seen as well about like info to like Sanjon about was like it's another that episode because like even though Janbe had like once like made the betrayal when it came to like the voting still like in hope like that and that time like who was like yeah and it's like even after that betrayal like they had gone through like the games and after like that like they really like in hope while probably even contrary to like Janbe who was like basically putting in all that effort to like make himself appear like way more genuine that genuine like that any other team members in like Sanjon's team like basically that info making that betrayal uh, maybe creating that serious shock within like Jangbe. Not only Jangbe, but like Sangon and others. But like in the case of Jangbe, like that would be making that doing that huge shock within Jangbe, connecting and Jangbe will be later connecting that to like Jangbe's experience where like Jangbe had like I don't think like in who Jangbe has only felt off about making those definitely not and Jangbe revealing all that to like Sangon. Uh, privately before entering into the force distributed. So the new branch right now. So letting you right now the new strategy to the swing and they to use the students and putting all that credit for that idea of Sanjion available next to the part of second house within six strategy and still this strategy to totally have the people around to totally have studio candidates totally that much those trust on Sanjion as well as to totally that way usually through such a manner to uh, usually inside special school game kind of a scenario where for that very night where in that very night to have the school game candidates especially with each of them holding on to having sub bottles of that that drink have drunk basically like to totally use that glass bottle as a weapon to eventually for the students will school game um, which could game kind of an attack scenario, in totally totally creating the necessary environment for such an eventual attack to happen in the between civilian candidates in the middle of the night and that way to have the civilian candidates who have already voted to leave the civilians a great number of them to end up getting eliminated during that specific game in the night. We definitely think of that plan, definitely on the so I'm doing right now that is the some civilian candidates that right now um, haven't made the move of really trying to reach out to convince the Indian candidates to continue playing. Definitely I'm looking him to be definitely solely due to both winning from him to be the first to be targeted during the game kind of a scenario where an attack by the between Sugian candidates would be happening in the middle of the night. It's definitely one of the things. So in that attack, I'm the first person, first Sugian candidate that will be getting targeted will be from Sugian candidates with new operation. And right now, it will be during that specific game kind of an attack between Sugian candidates will be when I'm doing some other Sugian candidate will be getting eliminated to select this scenario. So I'm looking the scenario to be as the some Sugian candidate will be straight away getting targeted and I'm looking a lot of Sugian candidates who wanted to continue playing the game totally targeting some game candidate and at that point I was the some game candidate trying struggling to evade the attack and dodge the attack and I'm looking as the eventually the attackers speaking candidate catching up to the some game candidate not being able to dodge further and at that point I was looking the mother civilian candidate totally rushing in to protect the some game candidate and I'm looking that way I'm looking the attack totally landing on the mother civilian candidate and that way her getting eliminated by trying to protect some civilian candidates especially when and at that point self I'm looking quickly Sangyon and the others would be saving would be only at that point that Sangyon and the others would be able to save some civilian candidate and fight off those attacking civilian candidates who are trying to take the life of some civilian candidates the scenario that I'm doing. Yet I'm looking once that this game will be over I'm looking the entire blame totally falling on, eventually ending up falling on Sanjon. Especially I'm looking that some game candidate would be seriously blaming Sanjon because of the info right now itself giving credit to Sanjon as being Sanjon's idea to to convince the game candidates to had voted to continue playing this game to change their vote and everything. So definitely I'm looking the through the eventually I'm conveying with the mother speaking candidate time during that whole clash between the speaking candidates and the some speaking candidate at that point being extremely enraged with Sanjon and blaming Sanjon and maybe even shouting out and telling everyone to no Sanjon that Sanjon is okay and basically who pretends to be this kind and genuine and empathetic person and that it's also such an image shift happening for Sanjon between among the Sunny candidates. It's also a possible that and so we all according to in-house realistic plan, especially so I'm the through that whole clash between Sunni candidates and the by the time and I'm looking a specific kind of a scenario as well happening where I'm looking while this clash will be going on I'm looking the lights as well will be keeping on blinking exactly during the special game in variant area and the lights will be blinking and that way to make the military manner to make it convenient for civilian candidates to attack each other and all that's like when that way like the game was like according to like the orders of like info this like info might have also be given them like and within that doing that is like scenario that I'm doing that way like once like this game will be over like I'm looking like the class taking the game candidate in the night the campus bring will be going to be over like by the like a great number of student candidates who would have voted to like the would have ended up getting eliminated while like very few student candidates who would have continued voted to like continue playing this game should be getting eliminated as like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm considering like in like the re-voting on the next day I'm still like the voting ending up being in like an almost tie like kind of like a situation or like being in like a tie like situation where like the final vote would be that of like info and info definitely betraying Atlanta and others and voting to like continue playing the series. The minimum friends that should be on. Friendship right now that is really Thanos and this really is from like sharing inside like the innocent guy names so I'm the setting in like the setting in like the re-voting like names so totally like voting to like continue playing Squid Game out of that being ruled by Sophia. These definitely I'm bring the show. And I'm going to bring like definitely in like definitely I'm going to bring also mention to like survive definitely like the very like Squid Game kind of like a fight scenario between like Squid Game candidates that will definitely be happening on that the jump will definitely happening on that video night like I'm definitely eliminating like way more like city candidates who will be voting to like leave than like city candidates that will be voting to like stay, especially in the industry. So like still I'm putting like in that vote attack and position like I'm still like meant to survive that like this scenario that I'm putting here like I'm bringing into out of like that exchange there and then so we'll be like with those screen there seeing that doing that the game of the like the scenario that I'm doing. So so out of that exchange here I'm doing the re-voting that voting to like continue playing today. Definitely one session and definitely I'm bring like definitely right now with like basically Thanos like really trying to like totally losing control and going crazy and basically trying to take the life of like the NG coin guy like I'm looking right now I'm bring like even though like Thanos will be only like going crazy and like would be like would have only forgotten and zoned out and might have only forgotten about like Thanos wanting all that money from like the NG coin guy and Thanos will be like right now as like Thanos like trying to Thanos will be right now actually trying to like take the life of like the NP guy. Like the scenario that I'm putting. But like I'm putting definitely the NP guy right now itself it's surviving and it will be solely due to like the attack on Thanos by Info. Definitely the scenario that I'm putting. But like right now I'm putting that it will definitely be Info that will be like attacking Thanos and basically saving like the NP guy. It's definitely not member. And it won't at all be like Info accurate trying to like wanting to like save the MG guy or something like it's only definitely as part of like in-house like villaistic stealthy plan because like Info would be like Info would have only observed Thanos by now so much to the point that like Info would be like only feeling that Thanos is like someone who has like this like his way of like getting papers to like basically listen to detect Thanos and join Thanos will be along the lines like Info would be totally feeling so like I'm looking like by creating like by attacking specifically by targeting and specifically attacking Thanos and basically like in hope right now being like part of like the group that has voted to like leave this weekend like basically attacking like Thanos who's was like wanted to like continue playing this weekend like that way like in hope instantly would be able to like create like the absolute rage of like basically even for the increase like the rage of like all those including Thanos like of like all those like Stygian candidates who had what like continue playing Stygians. So it should be what so that like info would be like getting info like realistic the which would be to like have that ultimate like extreme like which is good game kind of like a scenario to happen on that very night and for like a great number of like Stygian candidates who had voted to like getting eliminated to that specific game kind of like a policy between like Stygian candidates. So like definitely so like to achieve such villanistic goal, like I'm putting like info right now should be like showing up and attacking Thanos and saving the empty going guy from Thanos. Like when the scenario that I'm preparing right now, no frames. The player frames right now is definitely for like Thanos really survive like the fourth attack of like Benji going guy. It's definitely no frame. So like and like outside the Thanos will be like surviving like I'm definitely like among like the Stygian candidates like that that voted to like continue playing like Stygian or living among their team like I'm looking like there would be a doctor definitely not prevented. So like I'm like definitely like Thanos definitely won't be getting any collect from that game of the black. But like I'm saying that it could be from like the from like the Squid candidates who had voted like only playing this Squid game like under there on the doctor and that doctor and definitely would be like creating Thanos and from that way like that doctor saving chance like enough that episode over. So under different kinds of that or like a different like it would be like the doctor would be not from like a Syrian candidate who has voted in like continue playing the game, but like after maybe that doctor being a Syrian candidate that might have voted to like leave the Syrians to like start up with that employee. So like get like I'm looking like that at that point like definitely that from Syrian candidate like totally like keeping it like ethics and basically like would be like not at all considering like the fact that they really like Thanos had like voted to like continue playing this game and like definitely he would be like ultimately like trading and failing Thanos in like prisoner that are over. So like that way like Thanos like adoring and then definitely once it would be like nighttime like I'm definitely that very thing makes in Thanos we would have recovered to a certain extent still that will be launching that attack against like the Squid Game workers who would have voted to like leave especially like in scenario that I'm referring. So like still Thanos will be like only attacking the like Squid Game and the who have voted to like leave and I'm looking maybe in that attacking into the resulting in like one of like the Syrian candidates who would have voted to that continue playing like CDM like maybe ending up taking the life of that doctor who would have that doctor being and so on. So the feeling of the possibility would be like a Syrian candidate who would have voted to like leave the Syrian like with that Syrian candidate doctor like being up dying by the hands of like the Syrian candidate who would have voted to like continue playing the CDM like in the scenario that I'm going to expect and my opinion.